Hey guys, it's Alex with Hammond Watch. I'm here today with the Seiko SNZG13. It's a really handsome automatic field watch from Seiko's 5 lineup. And we're going to look at the sizing and specifications, and then I do have a few thoughts on kind of how this watch fits into today's market. You have a nice but substantial 42mm case. One of my favorite Seikos is the SNK, the smaller field watch at 37mm, but I completely understand that feels undersized to most. So this is that great secondary option that gives you the same kind of military vibes, but can fit on a much larger wrist. You have a 49.3mm lug-to-lug, which means it does have some wrist presence, but at the same time, I feel as long as you're sub 50, you're going to fit on most wrists. You have a 12mm thickness, which is really nice considering the automatic movement being used. And you have a 6mm crown. It is just push-pull, and it's not a hacking or hand winding. So the seconds hand isn't going to stop, and once you're all the way set in, it spins freely, but you don't get the resistance and kind of tactile pleasure of winding up the movement yourself. You have a standard lug width of 22mm, which means strap options are plentiful, which is really convenient because black field watches in general are strap monsters, and this one looks good on a number of different options. Whether you go NATO or leather or canvas or kind of whatever floats your boat. You do get a screw-down case back, which provides you your 100 meters of water resistance. That's plenty enough to go for a swim. I wear my push-pull crown 100-meter watches in pools and out kayaking frequently, and I've never really had any issues. You're really just not going to be suitable for any type of scuba diving, and I'd probably shy away from snorkeling as well. You can see through the display case back that you have an automatic 7S36C movement. That is a day-date, non-hacking, non-hand winding movement. You get roughly a 41-hour power reserve. Although in my experience it's a little bit closer to like 39. And accuracy out of the box ranges from -20 to +40 seconds a day. So as is the case with most Seiko watches, a lot of this one's appeal comes down to the dial. I love the overall look. White over flat black is always going to give you really strong legibility. This is a very kind of traditional field watch layout, although you do have this pretty wide raised chapter ring, I guess. You have larger lume-filled plots for the hours and then a running minutes track. As you work your way in, you'll have a 12 and 24-hour numeral set. The frame around the day and date complication is extremely well executed and sharp. And you have a little bit of flare and color pop on the tip of that seconds hand, which also carries just a little bit of luminescence. My only real gripe when we start picking apart the dial is I think that it's a little bit text heavy. You have an applied Seiko and 5 logo at 12 o'clock, but then just below it, it says sports and a really awkward font for the watch. I'm just not a huge fan. I think if you did away with that, the overall aesthetic would be a lot cleaner. In general too, I would be okay if they remove the jewel count. Jewels being incorporated into the movement, they're just strong pivot points, but it's not really a selling characteristic of a watch, especially when you have a display case back. It just feels a little bit redundant. As you'd expect, there's a pretty healthy application of Seiko's proprietary LumiBrite on the watch. I appreciate that they went with larger markers. It really helps with the low light visibility. And my only complaint is that the filling is a little bit inconsistent on the minutes hand. I've owned a few of these and have had multiple issues where the hands aren't perfect. That said, it really doesn't affect the watch's low light visibility at all. So here's the watch on my 7.5 to 7 3/4 inch wrist. As you can see, it wears really nicely. It's certainly got a footprint and a presence, but it's not overpowering by any stretch. Not too long, not too wide, not too tall. Just a really nice field watch. So when you start looking around to purchase one of these watches, you'll realize, I mean, they run right around the $150 mark when you're buying new. I want to say they're like $165 on Joma Shop. I think Creation sells them for $145 and Amazon right around $159. When you look on the used market, you'll see a lot of these pop up. I've bought a number of them for sub $100. You know, you're usually paying between $70 and $90, really just depending on the condition of the crystal above everything else. But one thing I do want to note, when you're looking for these watches, they are very popular as far as like mod candidates. People like to polish them out and do adjustments to the case, and there's a couple different case finishes. There's a watch called the SNZG13, and new, it comes on a nylon strap, and it's an entirely matte finished case. Like, it's all bead blasted. I think maybe the underside is polished, but everything else is just very, very flat and subdued. I strongly prefer the SNZG13. These come on a bracelet, but they also have a little bit more going on as far as finishing. You get a polished crown inside of the case. There's also polishing on the side of the bezel, and there's a polished ring right outside of the crystal. Not enough to take away from kind of the whole field watch aesthetic, but just enough to make it a little bit nicer to look at and a little bit more appealing. I have taken some of the matte finished ones and polished them completely out, and you know, it looks nice, but I think that really this is still the best color combination you can get. Now, where these really fit into the market is a little bit tricky. As AliExpress has gotten more popular, you're seeing a lot of dive watches kind of take it on the chin. You know, there are now many more options that offer much stronger value. But when you start looking at field watches, and not Fliegers, but actual field watches, there isn't a ton out there. The market hasn't really attacked that genre just yet, so I think these watches are still relevant. That said, its biggest competitor in my eyes, Mark at Long Island Watch, has a fantastic Islander field watch, 100 meters of water resistance, screw down crown, beautiful layout. I want to say it's like a 39 millimeter case, so you know, kind of in between the SNZG and SNK, and I think it's really a dynamite offering, and you get hacking and hand winding as well. But outside of that, there just isn't a ton of competition in that sub $200 field watch area. You know, take a look at Veyer. They have some cool options if you're willing to go quartz. But if you're an automatic watch guy, you know, this is very much still a player, and I think especially if you're early on in your watch collecting and you're acclimating to the hobby, this is a really fun watch to get and play around with, and you know, maybe do a crystal swap and have some fun with straps. So I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. If you have, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up. It helps out tremendously. Also, consider subscribing. I put watch content out about twice a week, and I hope to see you in the next one.